So I'm really, really interested in talking about your podcast because
Uh,
here I am, trying out a podcast. It's hard. um, like how do you get your guests? How do you run that thing?
Oh,
Yeah.
kind of. I guess first, I did not intend to have a podcast. I didn't set out to do it. Didn't want to do it. But in my previous position with the sheriff's office, I was the public information officer for 12 years. And so if anyone Googled my name, they would get a news story from 2015 of me talking about a fatal crash. Or in 2017, me telling people, hey, we had a lot of burglaries, please lock your doors, type deals. And quite frankly, that was not leading people to my training business because my training business wouldn't show up until page 2 or 3 of Google results. And so it's like I had to get some content out there directly related to the training side of my business, for financial reasons, quite frankly. So I started a little video series that I called Stop and Think videos. And I would pose a question and would try to garner some back and forth responses. Um, a couple of contemporaries, Caleb Causey, Chris Cypress, those guys sent video responses back, and I would do a little intro and play those. And finally, it got to a point where I asked a question that was going to take a conversation to answer, not something that someone could just do a video clip and send it back to me. And so we'll do a Zoom interview. And I posted that on YouTube. And a couple of more Zoom interviews followed with that. And someone asked me, "Well, when are you going to start sending these out as podcasts?" I'm like, "Well, I'm not. I don't have any intention to do that. I'm just trying to get some content that steers people to the training side of it." And Carl Wren actually pointed me to the website Anchor, which is a subsidiary of Spotify, and it's actually a free podcasting service. And you put it on Anchor, it goes out. If you do all the settings correctly, it goes out to Apple and Google and everything else. Well, okay. So I went back and I downloaded all the videos from YouTube and then put them up as podcasts. And it started going. The podcast feed actually gets, oh gosh, 3 or 4 times the amount of plays as the YouTube channel does. Um, you know, YouTube is the second largest search engine on the internet next to Google, and YouTube is owned by Google. But the podcast feed by far exceeds the traffic we get on YouTube. And so that's just how it all started growing. Um, as far as the guests and everything, I'm very interested in the history and evolution of firearms training. And so I wanted to delve into that topic a bit, and I'm very mindful of the fact that we are losing what I call the Generation One gun guys. It's kind of the whole thing. We lose a World War II veteran every day.
Yeah.
I don't know if that math is still holding true, but at one point in time that was the case. And I sat back and think if I could sit and talk to my grandfather again, what kind of questions would I ask him about World War II versus the questions I asked him about him when I was 8 and 9 watching a war movie. The only direct question he ever answered was, "Yes, bombs do whistle when they drop out of a plane." And other than that, he wouldn't talk about it. And so now it's like I want to sit down and talk to the primary sources about what's happening. And I'll give you a for instance. Um, we know contemporarily what we think of is the Weaver stance. And that's the locked out straight, strong arm, the elbow pointed to the ground on the support side arm, and the body standing bladed. Well, when you talk to Jerry McCown and you talk to Larry Mudgett and guys that were around Gunsight when all that was taking place, who refer to Jack Weaver as Jack and Jeff Cooper as Jeff because they knew them on a first name basis. And they all independently tell you that Weaver didn't do any of that, but he got tired of correcting people. Hmm. Well, maybe we need to delve into that topic a little further. There's actually a Shooting Illustrated article in which Weaver said that he found out about all that stuff by reading about it in magazines. He didn't even know he did it.
So he read
because he
about
didn't.
himself in the
Yeah,
magazine.
he's like, I read about all the stuff that I did in magazines, and I didn't do any of that. But if I were to put a picture up on the screen right now of what we call a Weaver stance, oh, that's Weaver. Well, it's not what Weaver looked like when he shot, because there's pictures out there of him shooting.
Hmm.
And so
See,
going back and talking to a lot of those guys that were around then has really changed my perspective on a lot of what I thought was true.
yeah, it's changed a lot of my perspective too. It's very, very listenable. Like
Thank you.
I could just press play and throw my phone in my pocket and get going. So how do you all right, so we've talked about how do you find these people? I think there was a period before we recorded where,
Mhm.
we talked a little bit about it, but man, just for the listeners and stuff like that, like can you talk a little bit about how you find these people, how you get them on?
I was able to interview a couple of the guys that I call the Gym One gun guys through personal connections at the outset. And word got back to some of the others. Hey, listen to so and so's interview on this show. And, you know, Dave Spalding, I interviewed him. He got contacted by a couple of guys. Hey, I saw your interview. I really liked it. And Dave said, well, would you do an interview? And some of them said yes, and some of them said no. And I got a few interviews that way. Cecil Birch mentioned Jerry McCown when I interviewed Cecil, because Jerry was the range master of Cecil's first gun sight class. Well, someone heard that, contacted Jerry, and said, "Hey, you got mentioned on this podcast," and they did an intro, and Jerry's done 2 episodes now. Um, Freddie Blish likes the show, and he's been on as a guest, and he's lined up a number of guests. Like, for instance, the episode that interviewed today was Steve Tarani. Well, that was a direct episode, direct link to Freddie. Um, an upcoming episode that's going to really be of interest, I think, to a lot of people is a direct link to Freddie, and that's I'm going to be interviewing one of Jeff Cooper's daughters,
Oh wow.
and that's all from the audience setting up the connections. And then some as I meet people through training and the like, and then some of us we delve into a topic where I know people we can reach out to, and
That's got to be a ton of fun, right?
it is,
Like
it is, it is.
yeah, gum.
Uh,
That
I
sounds
ha-
incredible.
One of my academic interests is history. I have an undergraduate minor in history, and one of the things you're taught in those classes is you go to the primary source. That is always the most accurate information. And so that's why I want to talk to as many of the Gen 1 gun crowd as I can and document that oral history. Like I said, if I could sit down and talk to my grandfather now, what would I ask him? So I'm going to ask these guys what I could ask them while I can. And some of them are very interested in documenting that history while we still have the opportunity.
And guys like me are very interested in listening to it. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I think I probably speak for all of your listeners when I say this. I hope that you understand just how much the work you're doing is appreciated. I really
Well,
hope you
thank
do.
you. Thank you. Thank you. If it had fallen flat on its face, it would have given me an easy out to stop doing it. But it keeps growing, and comments such as yours, like, well, okay, I'll find another episode to do, and it just keeps going. It's been much more rewarding than I thought it was going to be.
Folks, I want to give a very special thank you to Top Gun Shooting Range here in Memphis, Tennessee. This is where I teach personally. You can shoot our fully automatic machine guns in a safe and controlled environment. We also have a barbecue restaurant right here in the building. Ferguson's Barbecue has 4.7 stars on Google reviews, and also it's the only public range in the Mid-South that allows you to draw from the holster. And personally, I believe that that's the best way for you to practice for handgun self-defense. Folks, I do not shill for anybody. I promote the causes that I believe in, and I believe in Top Gun Memphis. Come by and see us.